Tonight's presenter is Mr. Joe Hall. Joe's been flying powered paragliders for more than 10 years. He's been a U.S. powered paragliding flight instructor for the last 7 years. Joe trained in California and Kansas with the U.S. powered paragliding co-founders. Joe's the owner of Air X PPG at Donegal Springs Air Park in Pennsylvania. It's November 71 if you're looking for it on the chart. He's serving his seventh year with the FAA safety team. Joe is also a GA liaison for the U.S. Powered Paragliding Association and the FAA. Joe retired from decades of service as a senior corporate executive in the healthcare and information technology sector. With that said, Joe, thanks again for joining us.
Thank
Let's
you.
talk about the challenges of winter PPG flying. I'm going to hand the presentation over to you. You'll
Okay,
have the controls in a moment, and it will be in your capable hands, sir.
cool. First off, thank everyone for joining us. We have a couple of dozen on the call, and that's a great size group. It's an honor to be here and to speak with you guys tonight. In terms of setting the stage for tonight's presentation, one thing I wanted to fly into is that we have a real broad spectrum of attendees, and the attendees historically range from ATPs, military aircraft pilots, helicopter pilots, to people who are obviously engaged in paramotoring now, and people who are just curious about it. So, in terms of the level of detail that I'm going to hit, I'm going to try to keep it at a broad level so that the detail is there, but it's meaningful to everyone. So that being said, I'm going to shut off the video and I'm going to hit the points of the agenda here. The agenda, we're going to have warm and cold weather activities comparisons. In order to bring meaning to this, I'm going to have to at least lay some groundwork for how we operate in warm weather. And then once I've established that warm weather profile, if you will, then the cold weather profile is going to make so much more sense. So what we're going to look at is just the various clothing, instrumentation, what our pre-flight routines look like. And I have some video. You guys know that if you've been on presentations that I've assembled in the past, you know I love to use video and photographs. As a veteran of the corporate world, one of the things that I was always reminded of is that your audience is only going to remember about 5% of what you say, but they'll remember about 85% of what they see. So again, hopefully the photographs, the video, the illustrations will bring meaning to this. We're going to do some flight data review, and we're going to contrast warm and cold weather sorties, if you will. We're going to look at distance, duration, elevation. We'll talk in detail about cold weather exposure review. We'll go over the physiological, the psychological, and the environmental influencers. We'll have a little summary and then go to Q&A. And just to keep myself accountable to you guys, I'm looking at the clock here. Tonight, I'm going to try to wrap the presentation up as close to 30 minutes as possible and leave us time for Q&A. The last few presentations that we've done as a team here, I've gone an hour on the presentation, and then we've gone another half hour on Q&A. So I'm going to try to get us out of here on time tonight and get you back to your families. So to start off, I wanted to do some illustrations, bring some illustrations of what summer sports mean to us. When we start thinking about summer sports, you know, you think about warm, and especially here in PA, it's like, well, what do I need to go out? Really, you don't need anything more than what these guys on the left have, a t-shirt and some shorts. You really don't even need shoes. One of my favorite pastimes here, surfing, you know, you can just jump in the water with the board and you're off and going. When we start looking at winter sports, it's a different dynamic. Okay, you see from the snowboarder and from the cross country runner, if you will, it's a different set of gear. This is one of my faves here. I love a little ski boarding, if you will. But and so you guys look at these pictures. If you're native of the Northeast Atlantic, this probably looks like home to you. But as you guys, many of you know, I came from the West Coast from 40 years of temperate climate. So when I think about winter sports, this is this is the image that comes to my mind. This is my buddy Mark over in Green Bay, and Mark goes out every day in his underwear. And this is something he told me years ago. He's like, I go out every day of the year in my underwear, nothing but barefooted. And if it's snow, if it's rain, no matter what. And so Mark is one of these kind of guys that when the winter comes, he's acclimated to it. He's all about it. He's like, yeah, let's go jump in the hole in the ice. That sounds like fun. So again, looking at the warm weather profile to contrast, here on the left we have from our Israeli Defense Force, we have Ben Boschel is one of my favorites. And you can see Ben has everything he needs. You could carry out onto the runway basically in one hand. Okay. He's got on a pair of shorts, he's got on a t-shirt, some bicycle gloves to protect his hands from the lines, and some tennis shoes. And then over here on the right slide, you see basically the paramotor, helmet, and comms. And so it's a very lightweight setup for summertime. I've met people that fly with nothing but shorts and literally in the summertime, no shoes, no shirt, no pants, just a pair of shorts. That I wouldn't do that, but that's how easy it is to work in the summertime. Now I'd like to draw with these slides some your attention to the hands, okay, and specifically the exposure of the fingertips. So in paramotoring, we use these lightweight instruments that tend to have recessed controls. Like if you see in the right slide, you see on my Yaesu there, the transceiver, all those buttons, they're really close together and they're click sensitive. So you've got to click them for it to register. The same with the Garmin device I'm wearing in the left slide. So the reason I'm bringing these slides forward is to show that the importance of having naked fingers, for lack of a better description, that your fingers are free to feel the control surfaces, and especially you notice that my last two fingers on my left hand in the left slide are in the brake toggle, and so just like your dad teaching you to fish when you were a kid, I'm sure he didn't tell you just to hold the rod. He said, hold the rod with one hand and hold the line with the other hand. And if you hold that line through your fingers, you can feel everything that's happening with the fish out there, probing your bait. Conversely, with the paraglider, the transmission of data, if you will, from the glider down through the lines and into your fingertips is something that I recollect being very close to fishing, right? I can feel in my fingers what the glider's doing in the wind based upon the tensioning and detensioning of the line. It's just like tap, 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 tap. It's like kind of like a Morse code. And as those inputs are coming in, I am responding to those inputs with control, right? I'll either be increasing brake, decreasing brake, or providing counter pressure with brake on one side, brake on the other side, to have the glider smooth out, fly in a straight line, or to affect turns and so forth. So it's really important to have, for me personally as a pilot, to have access and feeling in my fingertips. So with that being said, let's look at what pre-flight in the summertime, how that looks. Okay, and this is Tom here, and hopefully, there we go. Hopefully, I can get him to play. And the focus of this little clip, it's very short. It's just to show you his ease and range of movement, how easy it is for him to move, and his range of movement. So he's not impeded. Everything's looking good. Yes, sir. And of course, because it's nice and warm, he's not distracted by the weather. If anything, he might be sensitive to what's the little puff of air I'm feeling on my shoulder versus my face. Oh, I thought it was coming out of the north, but maybe it's coming out of the west. So he's not concerned. Um, Now I have a rotate and taxi, I believe. Again, just to show the ease of movement. And this is basically just rolling out to the field. I've got the glider set up. We're going to do a clip in. Taking our time this morning. We do a power up, and then we're going to inflate the glider, go to full power, and be rotating in about 5 or 6 steps. All right. 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. And brakes clear to the pulley. 10 and 11. You guys clear? Yep. Rotate, and as soon as we're up and running, I go to a flight deck in the summertime, and I keep all my instruments right there in my lap. They're all zipped up and secured. They're velcroed into position, and once I'm up and running, I unbutton that and get into it. And then I did a base to final and landing for you as well. And again, the reason I'm taking the time with this on the warm weather ops is so that you can see the ease of movement, the lack of restriction, the fingertips exposed all the way around. And oh, by the way, on the launch and the landing, the absence of anything on the field that would impede that. It's all green grass, it's all wide open. It's nothing to be concerned about. So I'm going to go ahead and run the base to final and landing. And this is on runway 28. So we're landing to the west. Our goal is to hit that concrete over here and have a dry glider. And so that's what we're looking for right there. So in that condition, you can fly in with wet grass. If you go off of the taxiway and you land on the taxiway, everything stays dry. That's a good thing. So looking at warm weather flight data, I'm going to use a flight from August 26th of this year. Down in Frankton, or Exmoor, Quinby area of Virginia. And what you can see from this data is that the flight duration was 90 minutes, an hour and a half, and that we reached, and we're flying at sea level. So this is a true 2,600 foot height above liftoff. I traveled 11 miles from the point of origin, but traveled a total distance of 38 and a half miles. Total height gain. So it's very, very clear cut what the data looks like. Now I'm going to bring in a slide, this previous data on the right, slide number 3 here. This is from an application known as Fly Sky High. And that's been kind of our standard for last half a dozen years or so. But this new Gaggle app that's out is by far superior. It has so much more functionality and data points, as well as being Bluetooth integrated. And all of the alerts within Bluetooth are user programmable. So we can have everything from elevation to speed to other aircraft warnings coming in off of the Gaggle data. And you can see I'm running the Gaggle flight recorder on that same flight. I ran both of them on that flight. And so they map out pretty close, 38 miles, an hour and a half, 26 is my average. You know, folks like to ask about our speed and distance. 8 miles an hour is my rotation speed, 26 is average. 53 on the downwind leg with tremors out. It's about as fast as we get. Now, if we go over and start looking at the cold weather profile, that's Ben. Let's get Ben out of there. The cold weather profile. So, in the slide on the left, we see the clothing, and this is not a multiple choice clothing option. This is everything. You wear all of this. This is my underlayer of Merrill wools, and then another wicking shirt that goes on underneath this shirt. And I have my flight pants over that, a light jacket, a heavier jacket, the flight suit, then socks, the boots, the heated gloves, and then the regular gloves will go on over the top of that. My head warmer, my neck warmer, then the helmet goes on top of that. All of this, I have actually my chest pouch and such. I've redesigned this, but there's my comms and my flight data. So looking at the slide on the right is a close up of the hand wear and our instrumentation. So I've got my heated gloves. I do have the summer gloves in there. We can disregard those. But what I wanted to focus on is the control surfaces in the green circle here. So if you look at 1 o'clock and look at those gloves at 1 o'clock, and you contrast those fingers to any of the surfaces in the green circle, you're going to say, dude, that's you're not going to use that. You're not going to be able to access those control surfaces effectively or meaningfully with those gloves, and that's absolutely right. So typically, what I'm going to do is I am going to bolt my altimeter and speed onto the frame, and I'm using this guy for that. So it's actually on my frame where I don't have to carry it. And then I'm just going to lock this on CTAF at 228, which is what we use at Donegal, and lock the keyboard so that it doesn't change and stay with that. Now leave the camera and stuff behind in the winter for the most part because the GoPro batteries tend to run out very quickly in sub-freezing temperature, and it's just not as interesting as flying in the summertime. Looking at the cold weather flight data comparison, okay? This one is from December of 2023, and you can see that right away the duration. This is 20 minutes, okay? My height above takeoff in the previous one, we were like 26, 2,700. This one, we're only 358. And max distance from takeoff, 2.8. I covered 10 miles. It's a short flight. And this is what it would look like, this being Donegal Springs Airport, just a quick little loop around the farm back here and back into land. In terms of flying in these conditions in the wintertime, this flight represents how would I say, more like a therapeutic flight, a have to flight, because I've been down for 2 weeks watching the snow and I'm done freezing. I've got to get out and do this. And that's what our winter flights typically will look like. So cold weather can significantly affect physical performance in several ways, directly through physiological mechanisms and indirectly through environmental factors. On the physiological side, we have reduced muscle efficiency. And everybody's familiar with that. I would imagine we probably have some hunters on the line that go out into the woods and hike around and go out to their blinds and so forth. So you'll know in the cold conditions, our muscles get stiff and less efficient. That's because our body is struggling to move the blood away from our hands and our feet into the core to maintain core body temperature. So if your core is good, you can survive. If unchecked, this can lead to reduced muscle blood flow and oxygenation, and that's going to impact your endurance and your strength. There's also the decreased neuromuscular effect. Okay, so cold can slow down nerve conduction velocity, which leads to a decrease in coordination and reaction times. This can impact activities that require quick, precise movements. And as you guys saw from the pre-flight and the rotation taxi on the warm weather slides, you'll see how we are working very precisely, very quickly for a very short period, right? It's like 3 minutes of intense focus, physical, timing. Everything has to execute right in sequence with split-second precision, or you'll have a failed or an aborted attempt. But once you're up and flying, the demand decreases considerably. You can relax and oftentimes during winter flights, I just park my brakes and put my hands under my thighs so I keep my hands warm. Um, there's the metabolic rate increase. The body increases metabolic rate to generate heat, and that's going to consume more of your energy. And so, right off the bat, it's like when you hit the cold water, it feels like, yeah, I can go. And all of a sudden, no, you can't. I don't know if you guys have seen I don't know, it was Bear Grylls who was doing the ice thing where he's like, how long can I survive in the ice? And they had the lifeguards out there and the doctors and stuff, and they put him into the hole in the ice, right into the water, and within 90 seconds he couldn't move. Right? It's just like, no, I can't get out of here. They put a ladder in, he can't pull himself out. Breathing and oxygenization. Cold air can be harsh on the respiratory system. This is something my folks yelled at me when I was a kid is, don't go out there in that cold weather, cover your mouth. It's going to cause bronchoconstriction, especially if you know anybody's got asthma or other respiratory conditions. Cold weather, cold air can be really rough on them. Less efficient oxygen intake, and that's going to impact your aerobic performance. That's not such a big deal if we're climbing into the cockpit of the Cessna or the Grumman Tiger, but if we're going to fly a paramotor, that aerobic performance is critical. And then lastly, body priority in cold weather is maintaining core temperature, and can affect performance by diverting energy from muscular work to thermoregulation. Sounds like something over at TMI, doesn't it? The environmental and psychological factors, pain, cold induced pain or discomfort. I was telling my brother the other day, we were talking on our phone call and telling him about remembering as a kid, we playing in the snow, and we were kids in the 60s, so we didn't have any kind of hand or footwear that would protect us. So we would just go out and play in the cold until we couldn't stand it anymore, and then go back in. And I mean, the heater was like a double-edged sword, right? You needed to get close to it, but it hurt so good to get close to it. So cold induced pain or discomfort, it's a real thing. This last one here, the motivation and mental state, this is the one that impacts yours truly the most. Cold weather it does affect motivation for outdoor activities. Although some find that challenge invigorating. My buddy Mark over in Wisconsin, psychological resilience plays a role. And if you're not mentally prepared for cold conditions, you're not going to perform. Okay, it's just as simple as that. For me, the visual that goes along with cold, like it can be my clip. I've over the years I've established a clip that I'll go down to freezing, and that's as cold as I'll fly if it's freezing. So last week it warmed up to freezing, and I'm thinking, hey, I'm going to get a flight in today. But in the course of the afternoon, as it warmed up, clouds came in. And so at 3 o'clock, I opened up my door to go out to start loading to go to the field. And as soon as I saw that gray sky and the cold air hit my face, I just turned around and said, nope, nope, not going to be me today, because it's the forecast was for 4 degrees to fall off by dark. It's going to be 28 by dark when I landed. And it's like, oh, no, no, no. I don't want to be messing with that. I'll wait till it's warmer. Clothing and gear, the need for additional layers can restrict movement. Big time, especially when you look at those gloves. You look at my flight suit. I feel like the Michelin character or the Pillsbury character from those old commercials. I'm like all puffed up and fluffy and can barely move. So yeah, the extra clothing definitely impacts your movement. It does provide protection, and so one of the things that I'd like to illustrate is that when we walk out onto the field dressed for winter flight, and we take let's say we take 10 minutes to set up, and let's say we have an aborted attempt, right? That something wind changes and the first inflation goes wrong, and you add another 10 minutes of groundwork to resetting and reestablishing your position for launch. Well, during that protracted movement, you sweat. And there are many times, not a few, but many times where By the time I've gone for my second rotation attempt, that I'm just completely soaked inside, standing out there in freezing weather with water dripping down my chest and my back, that as soon as you hit the air, it becomes, it becomes uncomfortable, to say the least. So, reduced traction and balance. Again, we try to work on the taxiway. Um, those of you that are familiar with November 71 realize that 10 and 28 are east and west, respectively, and our taxiway to the primary runs north and south. So we actually have all four corners of the compass that we can work with on the dry out there. So, you won't see us out there in these conditions setting up out there in the snow and ice, but rather we'll wait for the field to be plowed, wait for the asphalt to be plowed, and then work off of the asphalt. That's not always possible, but that's preference. Some of the positive impacts, endurance athletes perform better in cooler conditions. You see the Nordic folks that they go swimming in the ice. They do better in cooler conditions just because the body doesn't need to work as hard because they're acclimated. And people who adapt to a cold environment can sometimes perform better due to these adaptations. People who live in the ski villages are always better than the people that go up and try. Mental toughness. This is where definitely Mark has it. Training in cold weather can build mental fortitude, which can be beneficial in competitive scenarios. So, back in the day when I was a surfer and a runner, cold never bothered me. The coldest I surfed in was probably for mid to upper 40s, up in the Northern California, Washington, Oregon area. So it could get pretty cold, but it wasn't freezing. I never came out with ice on my face. Whereas with paramotoring, you can come in with ice on your face. Lastly, the impact on two-stroke engines. Any of you that have tried to bust out your snowblower after the summer, or your weed whacker after the winter, know that you can have issues with your two strokes. But the winter issues tend to be piston and cylinder related. In our environment here, it's number two and three. It's hard starts and lean mixture and jetting. And how we address the hard starts, most all of us keep our systems next to the bed. I'm just kidding. Most of us have a place in the house for our system, a heated area where we keep it. So I have a shop here in my house, and when I'm preparing for cold weather operations, I actually just crack the window back in my shop and I start the system here at the house, and I make sure that it's going to run before I take it out into the cold, and that definitely helps it along. In the wintertime, we have to open our carbs a little bit and back off of the mixture a little bit. It's just like a quarter turn that we go counterclockwise in the wintertime to enrichen it, and then we tighten it back in the summer to lean it out. These oil viscosity and warm up proper mixture adjustments, I haven't experienced those. Maybe some others on the call will share that they have. So here's a illustration of just the movement out here on the taxiway and getting set up. Just again to see the gear
All right.
and the
Let's see how it
the
turned out
restriction of it.
in my last flight.
So you see everything just is moving slower in the wintertime. Now I'm going to go over to the pilot POV real quick and just show just a count in, and just to show the glove and the overhead.
Man, oh man, all this for probably a 10-minute flight. Well, after 3 weeks on the ground, it'll be worth it. It's clear. It's clear. It's clear.
So again, the reason I'm showing these brief little clips is so you can see, again, what's happening with my hands now. Okay, both the throttle and my risers coming into hand. I can't feel that. I can see it. After I get tension on it, I can feel it through the palm slightly, but it's a completely different experience when you have that your extremities blocked. So, in summarizing, a thorough warm up is crucial. Okay, so before I leave the house, I'm also going to do stretching. Right, I'm going to stretch my arms, my legs, my torso. I'm going to do some squats. I'm going to do some sit-ups, some push-ups, and just be physically loose. Uh, Lots of water. This goes without saying because we have so much demand on our muscles, especially our legs, calves, thighs, that hydration is really critical in this sport. And in the summertime, I tell the students, I want to see you drinking a gallon a day. In the wintertime, personally, I don't have any trouble drinking a gallon a day in the summer, but in the winter, I don't care for water. I have to really make myself drink, probably 2 liters before I go out, just so that I don't go into cramps. And then, of course, the clothing that we've talked about. Now, I will tell you that there are guys. I don't know if Jason's on the phone or not, but one of our guys, Jason, is he's a PA native and he's a hunter and he works with his hands and he's in the cold all the time. And Jason will fly an hour and a half in the cold weather with less gloves than I'll have. And he's fine with it. It's just, his mental condition and his physical capacity is much greater than mine in this area. So really, some people can fly. Eric and Ryan will typically fly an hour in freezing, where 10 minutes is good for me. So net, as our buddy Clint says, man's got to know his limitations. And I say this tongue in cheek and completely sincere. I know my limitations from having had them smack me in the face. And specifically, you guys see the pre-flight, the inflation, the taxi and launch. Okay, when the one that I illustrated was a summertime with a nice little gentle breeze blowing at me. So that happens consistently, persistently every time like that. But when the wind is nil and perhaps shifting, right, it may require multiple attempts to get to a rotation, successful taxi and rotation. And so knowing what your limit is in terms of how many times you can do that. For me personally, it's 5. If I try 5 times and do 5 resets, and oh, by the way, that's about 35 minutes of time involved, I know physically, mentally, emotionally, I'm done. If I don't get up by the 5th time, I'm like, no, that's it. I'll fly another day. I've had other guys that 3 times. That's all they can do is 3, and the older guys, older than I am. And so knowing what your limitations are and working within those limitations is that's your success right there. Knowing, you know what? This doesn't feel right to me. I'm not going to go out and do this today. And being happy with that. So here is I think my last little video here, and this one is a snow launch we had an east wind this day, and I didn't want to walk down to the runway and run off the runway, so I went through the snow on this one. My buddy Jeremy, and we had Jeremy and Eric flying on this one, and at one point you'll see Jeremy lands on a knoll over here by Masonic because he wanted to warm his hands up on his engine. And so he actually just picked a little spot in the middle of the field and landed, got his hands warm, and then he pulls off and takes off from that. So I'll run this for a minute or so, and then we'll jump into Q&A.
about Monday morning when I walk to the car with alarm clocks warning. A paved parade to the sounds and guitars humming. Well, that's all in the day's work. And the boss is never sick, and we can't get a break. No vacations does the dude ever take. And all the time I waste trying to pretend I'm busy. But now make no mistake, I've been working myself busy.
Jump ahead here towards where I had Jeremy out. There we go. So this is where Jeremy's going to end up on this hill up here in just a second. That's Masonic. That's up from Eden View. And Jeremy has landed. He's on the hill right here. He's finished warming himself up. You can see here, we'll get his inflation. He'll go popping off that hill here in a second. There's his inflation. And there goes Jeremy. All right, so I think that's that. Okay, so in conclusion, while cold weather possesses several challenges to physical performance, these can be mitigated with proper preparation, adaptation, and gear. The impact can vary widely depending on your acclimatization, the specific sport or activity, and how well one manages the environmental conditions. Pilot self-awareness, as I just said, regarding your core strength, your endurance ranges, and limiting your flight to within those individual parameters is essential for safe winter flights. And with that, that's some of the crew here. I'll go ahead and hand it back over to our host.
Joe, it looks so peaceful and serene.
Well, that's our little slice of heaven out there.
I just hate the thought of the 5 degrees, 15 degrees, 25 degrees. Okay, a couple of questions we do have here.
Yes, sir.
First question from Chuck, actually two-part question. Do you have issues with carburetor icing?
Yes, absolutely. And it's one that it's who's asking the question?
It's Chuck. Chuck is asking.
Yeah, Chuck, if you want to reach out to me at AirX, just Joe at AirX and have a dialogue about this, I'd be more than happy to. I'm flying an Air Conception Revolution 200, and the evidence of my icing is blue, right? I have blue liquid around the carb after flight. And it's crazy. It happens in warm, humid weather as well as cold weather. So, but it hasn't impacted the power or the smoothness of the engine. So it's just something I do a post-flight, and I notice, wow, I have some fluid here, and I've gone through and done all my gaskets and rebuild jets and everything, and it still comes.
So you haven't had an issue where it would
It's
stop
not-
the
it's
engine
not-
from running while you're flying?
No. Now, typically, like any two-stroke, once you get it running and warmed up after 30, 40 seconds, as long as you keep RPMs going through it, right? These things, they crap out on us when we let them idle, and, carbon builds up on the plug. But if you keep it, just below the power band, which, on my machine, the power band is like 5 to 7,500. So if I keep it anywhere above 3,000, it's fine. It's never quit once. Now, that being said, a lot of guys will just go up and idle, and then they'll go for power, and it'll die. So, engine outs are something that we all encounter, and we plan and train for it. So every flight, every minute of every flight, we're looking, where do we land? Where do we land? Where do we land?
As we do with fixed wing.
Absolutely.
Second part of Chuck's question is, are the modern engines ethanol safe?
Ethanol, these things will run anything. Okay. So I learned in California where, ethanol free is not an option. And what we have in these little Walboro carbs is we have a final in the delivery phase, we have a final screen trap, and it's probably about the size of the tip of your little finger, and it's a really fine screen. And what happens if you run ethanol is that little screen traps it, and it gets a gooey substance, what I call, I don't mean to be rude, but I call them ethanol boogers, right? You get this gooey substance in there, and that does impact fuel flow, and it's a gradual come on, and then it shuts down, right? You might be flying along, and all of a sudden you're flying along at 7,500. All of a sudden you drop to 5,000, and then you let up and pull it, and it drops down to 2 and dies. Okay. And all you do is you land, you pop the plate off the carb, you go to that little screen, and if you've got a little dental pick or, even a toothpick, you just scrape that ethanol goo out, pop it back together and go. You can use seafoam as an additive. It's available at Pet Boys or AutoZone, and that will kill the ethanol in there. Fortunately, here in PA, we've got Sheets, and Sheets has ethanol free, and I want to say it's 90 or it's a good octane. So we run ethanol free here and don't have that issue.
Good advice. And I want to tell Chuck that the last slide we have in our deck tonight has Joe's contact information, both his phone number and his email address. Mike asks, you referred to 11 items during your final flight prep. You want to
Yes,
elaborate on that?
that's our pre-flight. Okay, so starting from let's see if I can just do starting from right thigh. Okay, is one. That's my right leg strap. Two is my left leg strap. Three is my waist. This is all the harness of the paramotor. So one right leg, two left leg, three waist, four chest. Okay, so that takes care of the paramotor. Okay, that is securely fastened to my body. Of course, we've pre-flighted all the backside connections to it as well. But continuing on up, we count up and then down. So up, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 is the chin strap on my helmet, making sure that my chin strap is fastened. Right. 6 is my left carabiner for the riser clipped in, making sure that that's locked and that the riser has the appropriate orientation. 7 is the right one. So 6, 7, left and right. 8 and 9 are my trimmer settings, right? Flap settings. Okay. Left and right trimming settings. Are they equal, and are they appropriate for launch and for the conditions? And then 10 and 11 are brake checks to make sure that you take the brakes off the pulley and you make sure that the brake lines are clear all the way through the pulley. Now, we've also already done a pre-flight on the other side of layout, making sure that all the lines are clear. It's not just a haphazard, okay, now we're going to take a look. Now, we've already done a detailed inspection in the layout. These are just the last 11 steps. Hope that helps, Chuck.
Oh, wonderful. And I have to add, Gary and I just watched a, YouTube video on paragliding, the fellow's first flight, and he had no clue how many straps he should have. In fact, he had straps that weren't even hooked up.
No, you ask the guys in this picture here, and they all do it right. They know what they're doing. I mean, you can just see the look on their face. They're all very good, competent operators.
Sandy asks, what is the app that you were using to Bluetooth your GPS to your iPad?
Okay, so I have Gaggle, Gaggle, and you can just type that into your search engine, and it'll bring it up for you. And you have to set up an account. And I want to say there's tiered accounts. Functionality is unlocked as you increase your subscription. I think there's a free version, but then as you pay, and I want to say the annual it's under $100, but it gives you a rich data set, and that integrates. I run it on all my surfaces. Okay, it runs on my computer here at the house. It runs on my iPad, and then in the field, I take it on my phone. And so in flight, Gaggle is playing right there in front of me. And so I can see what airspace I'm in, what my elevation, what my speed is, what my heading is, and if there's any traffic. So Gaggles is worth the investment. I would definitely encourage you guys to look at that.
Excellent. Next question. Is there a chance of my glider forming ice or ice collecting on the glider?
Yeah, that's a good
Good.
one. I mean, let's think about that for a second. The conditions that would provide for that would have to be a combination of humidity and temperature. And I would say that there's definitely conditions that you could get ice on your glider. Like I could take mine out and lay it on the snow right now and get ice on it. But I think in flight, I think that those conditions would drive the human being um, down to the ground bef from pain. It's so cold, I can't stand it. Oh, and it's wet, right? We don't fly in rain. We don't fly in moisture. So no, I'm not saying it's impossible. I mean, we have like Bear Grylls. If you concatenate Bear Grylls and then Everest together, there's a video of Bear Grylls flying over Mount Everest, and his all of his instruments froze. Right, he went to 30,000 feet, and all of his electronics froze. But he had oxygen and nitro going into the oxygen and nitrous going into the paramotor engine, and oxygen going into his helmet, and he did fine with it. And there was no ice on the glider or anything. So I've never heard of it. Now I've seen guys that have flown into inclement weather and get their gliders wet and come back and land with pretty much a soaking wet glider. Um, and thinking that's pretty darn dangerous because obviously at some point the saturation would knock you out. But typically when we see rain coming, we head right for the surface.
This one is for me. So you get so cold that your legs become stiff as you're flying. When we come down to land, it's going to hurt bad.
That's a great point. And so in terms of your individual capacity, that's something that you need to be aware of. Like for me, I'm an old guy, right? You guys can see I'm an old man. I'm in my 60s, right? My endurance is not one of my hands or my arms. My endurance, to be very candid with you, is my bladder. And sitting in the glider flying for an hour and a half, after an hour and a half, I want to get out and stretch and go to the bathroom. So your body will tell you what you need to do. You obviously you don't want to land in a cramp. That's one of the things we learn early on is that if you get cramps in your calf, well, you maybe do a go around and reach down there and try to work that out because if you land with a cramp, that sudden pressure on your muscle can result in a pull. So.
So there's no such thing as a sliding on your butt landing.
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. There's all sorts of sliding things. I mean, we have face slides, we have butt slides. Yeah, yeah. Especially when we miss the taxiway on a summer day, right? So you're coming in, you've had a great flight, you've got maybe nil wind, so you're coming to land at 15, right? And you hit that grass and it's soaking wet. And if you're not just timed exactly right, those feet go right out from under you, and down you go. So yeah, we've all had that one out.
Jess is asking, have you tried the electric heated vests and gloves?
Yes, yes, I have the Aurora unit, and one of the guys has the vest. I just have the hands, and contemplating the vest. I want to say it's about 250. So, I was telling Linda the other day, my wife, but by the time I walk out onto the field, I've got about $1,000 worth of clothes on. Seriously. But and then when you put the helmet and comms on top of that, you've got another $1,000 before you know it. So it can eat up your budget pretty quick.
Adds up.
Yeah. Well, and we don't get into aviation to save money, right?
This is true. This is very true. Hey, Ryan is asking about ADS-B
Mhm.
and will it be available or is it available for Part 103 flyers? You want to
So
talk at all about that?
yeah, I'll touch on it briefly. Okay, there are a handful of pilots. Mark Honeycutt's one that are, and Mark is not an ATP. He's a Black Hawk helicopter pilot. But there are a handful of pilots who are in that category, military slash ATP, and are also technical. And so these guys have been working on ADSB solutions, and there have been a few pilot, and I mean that in the classic sense, the pilot test models out. But the weight is sort of cumbersome because they're the power required to transmit with it. You've got to carry battery, and also this is not an FAA approved craft for ADSB. So, we don't talk to tower unless it's essential, unless it's an emergency. So, um, that being said, I have 40 years in tech behind me, and seeing the miniaturization of technology over the years, I can't help but think that, I mean, I wear a watch now that will tell my position anywhere in the world. Well, I didn't think I could do that 20 years ago. So ADSB and the size of the watch, yeah, I can see that happening probably in the next 2, 3 years, but not commercially available now.
Tom writes, "Hello, Joe.
Hey,
Good
Tom.
to good to see you again. Not a winter question, but years ago you recommended the Garmin Phoenix with Stewfly for PPG GPS use. Is this still your go-to, or do you like something better these days?"
Okay, so here, I don't know if you guys are seeing, I'm holding it up in front of the camera, right?
Yep.
I'm still using actually, I'm using the Garmin Tactics Charlie, and I've had this for, I don't know, 5 or 6 years now. And Tom, I use that in the wintertime when I don't have my flight deck out there with me. And I'll strap it to the frame. I'll put it on my swing arm. Um, but I've moved over from the Stewfly app to the Gaggle app because I love the data availability. It's like any cloud-based data, right? So you can see it on your iPad, you can see it on your phone, you can see it on your computer. You can send a link to somebody else, and they can just click on the link and play your flight. In fact, I think I have. Can I still share?
Sure.
Am
You're,
I?
you're yep, you're still sharing.
Okay, so are you seeing this map here?
Not looking at a map, we're looking at your question and answer screen.
So let me do a stop here and let me go and do a reshare.
And while you're doing that, Tom also writes, "Blue skies, I hope to get up to November 71 again, at least once this season."
Oh, please, yeah, love to have you. Okay, so this is the Gaggle playback. Okay, and this is at 16x, and you should see. I want to pop up here somewhere as this thing plays along. So this is one of the reasons I like Gaggle so much. Again, because I can send you this link and you can play my flight. And if you like it, you can import it into your Gaggle and you can run it for it's not running through the interface right now. See if we can get it to go here. Just the ability to share and the rich data is it's outstripping the other applications. I'm not sure why. It's probably just the web. But typically when you go into play mode, you actually see my takeoff and you see the flight track actually play out in real time. We went all the way out here to the offshore islands, went all around this, and then came back in. That was the graphic you were seeing earlier. So sorry that didn't play. I bet.
All right. So TR is asking, you mentioned about jetting. You want to talk about jetting?
Yeah, just with the carburetors, they have a series of jets in them, and the jets control the fuel flow into the engine, into the reed valves. And so sometimes if we're using ethanol in our gas, those jets can get clogged. Typically, that screen is the catch point. When we do the rebuilds or maintenance on the carbs, we typically have a maintenance cycle we go through. Get a little rebuild kit that's maybe $15, and it has new gaskets, pins, and jets in it. Sometimes manufacturers or mechanically inclined individuals will drill their jets, right? We'll pull the jets out of the carburetor, right? And they're just little barrels, and they'll run a drill bit through them and increase the diameter. You have to be really careful because they're thin. But I've seen guys do that in the past just to as a performance enhancer, if you will. Let's get some more in there.
And if you need some help with that, check with your professional.
Yeah.
Liz Scott writes, Hi, Joe. When flying in winter, I have cold wind traveling up my pants legs and
Yes.
freezing wind coming under my face shield.
Don't do that.
Is there a special flight suit and a
Yes.
special helmet for winter?
Okay. Well, again, it's more the flight suit is any snowboard suit, any snowboarding single mono suit will work. For me, give me 1 second here. The key, I'm just going to grab a couple of things here and bring them around to the presentation. Okay, so the key for me and keeping my head warm is Mr. Balaclava. Okay, and this is like the industrial balaclava, right? This guy covers my head and it goes down into my jacket. Okay, and then I've got another one muffler that goes on over that, and that seals it up all the way down, right? And I keep both of these up over my mouth. Then comes the helmet. There you go. Does that answer the question?
It does. And if you run out of cash, you could hit the local bank.
Yeah. They might think I have COVID or something, huh?
The second question from that same person is, what radio helmet would you recommend?
Okay, we're all pretty much geared to the same transceiver. And the reason we go with this is for portability. Okay. We use this is the Yaesu FTA 250. And I have several of these. What I like about this, again, it's portable, right? It can go in your chest pouch really easily. But I like the wires, the comm cable that wires up into my headset. It screws in with two screws here, and so I know if I some of the radios, Baophone, for instance, it just plugs in. And if you stick that into your chest pouch and then you move in the wrong way, half of it comes out. And so they're not hearing you. So I love secure cables that are actually physically affixed to the device. So that's what I use, the Yaesu. And again, on the helmets, there's so many different helmets available. I would suggest you reach out to me at AirX, just Joe at AirX, ppg.com. And I can give you helmet options that you can do yourself that are as cheap as probably $300-400 and up to maybe 2,000 that we use. So this one right here, this helmet right here, this is an APCO with HS-COM boom and ear cups. So there's like 3 impel cores. The ear cups and the mic and the harness are like 400, and the helmet is probably 350. So this is, do the math on that.
Is that a noise canceling headset?
This one is not, but if I go over here to the next one has the Bose, what they call ANC, active noise canceling on it, and Bluetooth and the wire. So, as you increase your spend, right? You can go hardwire, which I don't ever use Bluetooth for AirCom, but then I have the Bluetooth to hear gaggle. And while I haven't utilized it, you can have, I mean, I have pilots that listen to music and make phone calls from their system, and they do it with great clarity. Like Chris tells me he calls his wife from flight deck, and she doesn't hear the engine at all. So
That's awesome. So with the Bose noise canceling,
mhm.
have you had problem with the air going over the headsets getting that wobble sound?
No, again, so the headsets will clip out and then clip in, and then once they're clipped in, I'm coming in with my chest or my chin strap to secure the cups over my ear. And I wear a helmet that fits, my head. I'm a medium sized head. So if you get the right size helmet, those cups should fit securely. If you get the 3M Peltor, any of these systems with the 3M Peltor, those are awesome. I mean, you'll tell the difference. As soon as you lock them down over your ears, you don't hear anything that's going on out in the room.
Good product, huh?
Yeah, yeah, and they're cheap. I mean, I got my wife some for running the vacuum cleaner. They're like $40.
Awesome. So Brent is asking, boots versus tennis shoes when you're flying.
Well, again, it's a matter of personal preference. We cooperate with the jump club out at Donald Springs at the Maytown Sport Parachute Club, and one of my buddies out there is an instructor. Calls my boots ankle snappers. Hey, you wear ankle breakers, Joe? What's the matter with you? I wear flight or combat boots, Army combat boots that lace up above my ankles, and in the wintertime, I have a whole rack of boots here. But in the wintertime, you got to get up to something like this. Okay, these are Merrill Winter lined inside. They're waterproof and they got great traction on the bottom. And then I wear military style cargo pants that have ties at the ankle. And so as I'm suiting up, I tie my leg together. And then when the flight suit goes on over that, there's 4 Velcro points, one at either wrist and one at either ankle. And so once you've got that thing on, and then you've actually got a drawstring on the neck that's got a little pin on it. So you are like, again, like the Pillsbury Doughboy.
60 minutes worth of
Yeah.
clothing.
Yeah, so I get nothing up the leg, nothing through here. And if that balaclava, if somehow it comes out in the back and I get just a little crack, forget about it. I mean, once it starts coming in, it goes everywhere. You get cold really quick.
Got it. I don't see any other questions. Gary or Jim, if you see something, just shout it out, please.
Hey, we're only 5 minutes over.
Uh, awesome.
Awesome.
Looking good, Rick. No
Looking
open
good.
questions.
All
Awesome.
right, cool. Well, I want to thank everybody for the many questions and special thanks to Joe Hall. Great
Thank you, guys.
presentation. Joe, do you want to take a few moments here and share your closing thoughts? And then I have a couple of slides to finish up.
Yeah, again, it's great to see the community growing here. I know that Brian Goff over on the York side, he runs a much more, I would say, robust school than AirX. Brian is anywhere from maybe 3 to maybe a dozen students at a time, and he has other instructors helping him and so forth. So it's a real collegiate type of environment over there at Shoestring. Is where they're operating. Over at Donald Springs, we're more onesie twosies. I like to work. As you guys see, I'm an old guy. I go a little slower, and I tend to teach maybe a little bit older clientele. Although I do have a bunch of 20 somethings as well. But I like the focus of one-on-one versus a group setting. I can make much more progress and be much more effective with my students if there's just one or two of them. When I look at the role I'm in with the liaison between FAA and USPPA, that just means I'm the ear to hear people cry and complain about what is happening with them, and typically it's noise or perceived intrusion. I don't like the noise that this thing is making, or it's intruding in a way that I perceive as illegal. And so one thing I can say with our group here in Pennsylvania is that we don't really have those issues. And I think Gary and Rick would back that up. We don't have a lot of complaints or really any complaints coming into Harrisburg, FSDO, or when they do, they come back to my desk and we're able to get them resolved pretty quickly. So I'm really stoked that we have a mature and responsible group of pilots here. I want to say we're around 40, if I count right, around 40 pilots right now within probably a 20 mile range of here. So, and if you're willing to come out and play with with the transceiver, that's our requirement, that you be a PPG-2 pilot and have an aviation transceiver to fly off the field at Donegal. We'd love to have you out there. It's a great place to fly.
Awesome. Thank you again, Mr. Joe Hall.
Thank you, guys.
For those of you familiar with the Wings program, you could sign off now, and thanks for viewing the presentation. Your Wings credit will be issued. If you're new to Wings and want to hear a little bit more about it, I just have a couple of slides. And then again, at the last slide I have, second to last, is Joe's contact information.
Real quick, Rick, one thing just came in on my question and answer.
Go for
It's
it.
from Mitchell. He said, "Thank you for a great webinar, Joe. I
thank
appreciate
you.
the time and effort you undertook to present this webinar."
Thank you, Mitchell. I appreciate it, buddy. Means a lot to me.
There we go,
Awesome.
Rick.
Our FAA safety team mission is to reduce the aviation accident rate. We believe participating in the Wings program will provide safer skies, fewer accidents, more lives saved, and a chance to win some cash in your pocket. I have just a short video to play about the Wings, pilot proficiency, and here it is.
When you put a family member aboard an airline flight, you expect that flight crew to be red-hot proficient and that your family member will be safe. After all, those pilots have had mandatory simulator training within the past few months. So why then, when we take a friend or family member flying, do we not demand the same level of proficiency of ourselves? Kind of crazy, right? Using the FAA's Wings program can help, and it serves as a flight review. 57 seconds starts right now. Wings, the FAA's pilot proficiency program, combines continuing education through courses and seminars with periodic flight training with an instructor. After registering at FAAsafety.gov, the My Wings page populates with flight lessons tailored to your certification profile. Choose these or search for other options. Open and print the task list and fly with a current flight instructor whose job it is to hold you to the task completion standards. But remember, this is training, not a check ride. You cannot fail it. Instead, you work towards proficiency. After the flight, the instructor validates the credit online in your profile. After the successful completion of 3 flight credits and 3 knowledge credits, you will have completed a phase of Wings and you'll get credit for a flight review, and with it, possibly a break on your aircraft insurance. This consistency in training helps general aviation pilots stay proficient. Now you can fly your family and friends with greater confidence that you're again at a high level of proficiency. We often find many pilots are eager to attend webinars, courses, or in-person seminars, but not so eager to get into an airplane or helicopter with an instructor holding a task list. However, opting for a flight review is often settling for just the basic currency requirements. Try to hold yourself to the same standards of proficiency that you would expect of the airline pilots who fly your family. For the FAST team, I'm Phil Dixon.
I know we're talking about PPGs here, but some really good information, FAAsafety.gov. There's a lot of good courses there, airspace, all kinds of different things. So if you have an interest in it, FAAsafety.gov. I'll flip through a couple of slides here. If you are a Part 91 flyer, there's sweepstakes where you can win some cash awards. Go to FAAsafety.gov, pilots, My Wings. This is how we enroll for the program. And if you have any interest in it, give me a shout direct. As I had said, some of our upcoming webinars, I'll leave it up for a second or two. We hope you enjoyed tonight's presentation. And if you have a topic or suggestions for a webinar, my email address is on the next slide. Drop me a line. And remember, some of those PPG photos or ultralight photos, I would love to have them in our slide deck. On behalf of myself, Gary Martin, Jim Logie, and our presenter, Mr. Joe Hall, thank you for joining us tonight. Be well and fly safe.
See you guys next time.
There's our contact information.
All right.
Thanks for listening, and good night, everyone.